Alan! Hey, there he is.
What up? Can you hear me?
Yep. I'm about to get my headphones.
Let me,
Can you make him a sandwich? Pull the edges off the bread. He doesn't want to cut in half.
Turn on the light.
what? Go ahead.
People are starting to join already.
You have to let them in, or are they?
No, they come right in, so they're checking it out.
Young man? He can't hear me, though.
Nah. Okay, Chico, go. Daddy's got work to do.
Alan cheeses as much as you do.
Yeah, what'd she say?
She says you cheese as much as I do.
Bring me 2 waters, please. I do cheese. Come on, they want to see your pearly whites.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can eat them. That's what they're for. Why, he wants some?
Let me see what it's like with the lights off. Can you flip the... Well,
Right now there's 17 people in
you
here.
do the 4. That's fine.
Anything else from the lighting, audio, video?
No.
You want that one off?
No, that's fine. Maybe that one. That's over there. I don't know. Can everyone hear us, or?
Yeah, everyone can hear us and see us.
No. They can hear us.
We are live.
What?
All right, let's
you can turn that one off.
Sure you don't want my heavy duty headphones? I know, since you have that.
It's fine. Somebody chat.
All right, here we go.
I can't believe you're playing this.
We're all the people. Here's a little highlights of Coach Jamil as we have people joining. Did you bring back memories, Jamil?
Yeah, these are fun times.
So this is what, high school, right?
Yeah.
Look at that. Hit it so hard, camera couldn't keep up. For all of the people that are in, thanks for joining us. We'll get started shortly. We're just running through a little highlight clip of Coach Jamil. This is his high school days. What'd I say? The American Robinho.
I don't know about all that, but certainly good times.
Is the TV okay?
That guy celebrated like it was big. I know that run up. Just remember that little volley.
Yes, sir. That was our rivals too.
Was it? It
Yeah.
seems like you guys, people were really celebrating in this game.
Yeah. There are the other private school, the other Catholic school.
I wonder how many people noticed that service that you played was with your left foot.
Probably not too many, but
Yeah, look at that. I hope my forwards are watching.
I'm sure they've seen better highlights than that, but question, what are we doing? Just getting started.
Yeah.
And this
So
will take about an hour, right?
Yeah, hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. No, I'm just kidding. We'll go for a little. We'll go for about an hour or so. Let you talk about your high school to your college to your
Right now, we're just waiting for people to
professional
join.
playing. That right now it's just people joining in the chat. We just started at 5 o'clock, so
The other coach, I think some people were chatting.
let's see here.
I am the other Coach Jamil. There's one Coach Jamil, the younger age groups, and then I'm the older one. We can't hear anybody talking, just the guys, just chat or Q&A.
All right. Yeah, so as Coach Jamil was just saying, we are interviewing Coach Jamil Walker. That is the current head coach of the 06s and 04 ECNL boys. We do have another coach, Jamil Fariati, who's our AGD for the U9 to U12. Maybe we'll have him on an interview at another time.
Yeah.
So Jamil, first, thank you for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
Out to get to know you a little bit. All right, and people, please feel free to ask questions as we're going, and I will get to some of the questions during and then towards the end.
And how do they submit questions through the Q&A? Is there a button?
Yeah, there's a Q&A button. I believe everyone should see on their screen. My screen looks a little bit different. But as the questions come through, I will answer them whenever I see a good time to ask, or maybe towards the end. All right. So, Coach Jamil, why don't you go ahead and start off a little bit and, get a little bit of background and how you want to start.
All right. So, like Alan said, thanks for having me, first of all. Coach Jamil Walker. I'm the AGD for the older boys, and I coach the 04 and 06 ECNL. Just want to talk to you about my experience of my path from a youth soccer player into playing pro. I played for 7 years in the MLS for San Jose Earthquakes and DC United. But things started for me like most players with youth soccer, house league, coached by my dad. I grew up in a household where pretty much everyone played soccer. My older brother, I have two brothers. My older brother and my younger brother played. My parents were from Jamaica, so soccer was soccer and track are the primary sports there. And so, grew up playing from a young age, probably from 5 years old, playing competitively. And things didn't get serious until probably U12, when you start playing travel. And I grew up in Virginia. So my youth days were with Vienna, initially with the house league. Then we moved to Herndon. So I played for, a Herndon club team and some teams at Chantilly. And I got, I was a decent player at that age. My main thing was I was a forward. So I had a knack for scoring goals even from a young age, and speed. I was pretty fast. And we had played this select team, this travel team called Washington Diplomats, and they crushed us. It was like 9-1. I was playing, I think, for Reston at the time, and I was one of the only the player to score a goal, and I think I impressed upon the coaches. So the next year they semi-recruited me to come on and join that team, and that team was kind of a select players from all over Virginia area, and ended up joining that team. I think U11 age group. And that team was one of the, team that played in State Cup and the top division of NCSL, and was very competitive. One of the best teams of that time. I think probably 4 or 5 guys on that team went pro, and several of them played in college. And it was a select team like our ECNL teams are now. It's a different landscape than it was back then. In NCSL was the main league. And ODP was kind of the next level. There was no academy. There was no separate, ECNL, EDP, things like that. It was just NCSL Division 1 through, I think, 8, and then ODP and the high school. So, playing state cup and winning state cup was a big deal. It was usually the best teams at that time were playing those competitions. And I was fortunate enough, I think I might've been, we won one state cup, but it was very competitive. The Prince William teams were good. Springfield teams were good. Each kind of county had a really strong team. Similar to kind of the academy setup now, I think there was the best of that time were on the top teams in those areas. And so, I joined that team as kind of my what ended up probably being my role throughout a lot of my teams. Honestly, it was a kind of a backup role. I didn't start every game. I had to come off the bench often, either late in the games or as a sub, and earn time. And my experience as a youth player, I was very passionate about soccer and trained a lot in the backyard with my brothers. My inspiration really came from watching my favorite player, John Barnes from Liverpool. I watched a documentary on him, and that really inspired me to really work on my game a lot. But things didn't really take off for me. I was a smaller player, kind of overlooked, especially when we went to ODP and things like that. I never made it past states. I never passed, districts. So I was, played on a top team, but when it came to being selected for things, especially for ODP specifically, I never got past districts. I made district team, but never made it to state team, which probably now seems like, it's pretty straightforward to do. But back then it was very competitive. And to make the state team, especially in Virginia, which is a very good state, was very difficult. And I never was able to do it. But I think my mentality was to keep working. And I know at the time I was frustrated because I saw other players who I didn't think were as strong as me getting selected, and I felt like it was because of my size. I was very small and quick. Just to give you an idea how small I was going into ninth grade, eighth grade and ninth grade, I was 89 pounds because I wrestled that year at 91 pounds. So I was underweight that year. And that's how I remember that specifically, because the wrestling coach was like, "You're perfect for this." And so as a young player, I was fast but small. And so I think I got overlooked a lot. But typical experience, I think, as most, I went to soccer camps in the summertime, trained with my brothers, trained with my friends, went to track camp as well. It's probably a little bit different than most people. I ran track as well because I was pretty quick. And played other sports, nothing organized. I mostly played soccer. It was the only sport I really played up until high school that was organized. But ran track, played basketball, and all other sports. I think one of the things that I think is different for me is that all of my brothers played soccer and my dad. So it's kind of having a household of people who watched soccer and played soccer continually was helpful. And I think my mentality, at least, was to go as far as I can. I always dreamed about playing professionally, but it wasn't my main focus. School, work, and just being a kid also was important to me and my family. So we actually moved to New York. So right before high school, I moved to New York. And I ended up going to an all boys private school named McQuaid High School. And my younger brother, who was only 11 months younger than me, ended up going to public school. He wanted to go to public school. I wanted to go to a private school. And my experience going into high school was, again, pretty rough. As a freshman, I didn't even make JV.
How tall were you? One of the questions, sorry to cut you off, was one of the questions here is how tall were you when you went to high school?
I don't
You
remember.
mentioned you were a small player.
I was very small. Those videos you saw early it was my senior year, and I was 5'8" my senior year, so I was probably 5'6", 5'5". I don't know. I was tiny as a freshman. So my younger brother, sorry. I was a late bloomer. He was an early bloomer. He sprouted up in seventh grade. I probably have a picture of us, but it's kind of funny. I don't know if I could share my screen, but he was head and shoulders taller than me. Can I? I'll show you. I'll show you a funny picture real quick, just so you can get an idea. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
I'm on the right hand side here on the right hand, and my younger brother is on the left hand side. So, and I'm in 8th grade and he's in 7th grade at that time. Can you see?
Yep. You're smaller than him. And
my mom is 5'6", 5'7". So you can see how short I was as an 8th grader. And just to give you an idea, so I didn't make the JV team as a freshman. Luckily for me, they had freshman soccer in New York. So while most of my friends that were playing down here in Virginia were playing high school JV, I had to play freshman soccer, basically playing with 9th and 8th graders only. My younger brother, he was kind of like the superstar because he sprouted up early. I think he got called up to the varsity team as an 8th grader. So he was doing well early on, and I kind of had to work my way up. So just having those disappointments, but I enjoyed myself. I still worked hard, trained as much as I possibly could. I decided to wrestle that year to try to a little bit stronger in the winter time. Still ran track, but was training. So I was training often. And then sophomore year, I ended up making the JV team. Didn't make the varsity team as a sophomore. So same kind of disappointment. My friends were as sophomores in Virginia. My brother now was playing ahead of me. A younger brother was playing in a varsity as a freshman. And I was a sophomore playing JV. And same experiences in ODP. I never really got past, even in New York.
Did that fuel you? Did that fuel you at all? Seeing your brother?
It did and it didn't, because I was super competitive with him, but it didn't bother me that he was doing better than me. But I also I knew I could play at his level. We played on the same club team. It was kind of weird. We played the same club team, but high school, he was getting selected for the varsity team, and I wasn't. And his team was better than mine, so it's not like I was on a top team or my school's team was difficult to make. It just, for whatever reason, the coaches didn't see value in having a smaller, quick type of player when they had some guys who were older, more experienced, bigger and more experienced. So, I had to watch a lot of his success early on. He was making state teams and going on to region teams and going on trips and things like that. And I think I just stayed. I had a strong sense of self-confidence that eventually things would work out as long as I kept on working. I know I was frustrated at the time. I remember being frustrated, but it never stopped me from continuing working. And I loved playing. So it didn't matter to me where I was. It just was, I was just enjoying myself. And I didn't really think about the steps that would require me to play, say, college or pro. I just was playing and working hard. And I remember, if you watch the John Barry's documentary, a lot of players who go pro have their bumps along the way. It could be, your family dynamic, your environment, something you had to overcome, or being an immigrant in a country. Just any of those things you have to overcome. For me, it was my size. Being a smaller player at that time, wasn't valued as much. A lot of bigger, stronger, more physical players in the United States were what they were looking for, and some guys who sprouted up early were selected over me. And being a forward who was smaller, I guess some of the coaches didn't value that. So, but I was a player with good technical skills. I could strike the ball with both feet. I can dribble. I can control. I had the foundation there, and that's something that my parents and my older brother as well kind of guided me. My dad guided me. He's like, continue working, and eventually those things will happen for you. So I think our mentality in our family is, every disappointment is for good. And that's something that I live by today. You learn from those experiences, and they let you, they allow you to kind of grow. All right. You learn more from your struggles than you do from your successes. So, at the time, I probably didn't know that as well as I do now, but, going through high school was a good experience for me because, I struggled. So freshman year, I didn't make JV. Sophomore year, I didn't make varsity. I finally made JV. And then my junior year, when I finally did make varsity, I broke my leg right as the season was starting. I broke my 5th metatarsal. in my foot right as the season was starting. And I pretty much missed the entire season except for I would have missed the entire season if it wasn't for me deciding to cut my own cast off and play in the playoffs.
Don't do that, boys.
I
And
would
girls.
recommend that, but basically I wanted to play, and I hadn't played pretty much all season. And we were at our final end of the season party, and we had playoffs. The team had made playoffs, or they call them sectionals, up in New York. And so I jumped in the pool and just got it soft, the cast soft enough, and then took a hacksaw and cut it off. And
wow.
And then just taped my foot up as much as I possibly could, so that there was no pain. And I think we won our first game, and I played limited minutes as a sub. And then we had to play Fairport, which is like the top team in our area. Ended up losing to them 2-1, I think, and I almost ended up tying the game up late in the game, but we ended up losing and we were out. So senior year.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Quick question. How was your diet during this whole time of your high school?
Diet was.
How much did it affect your play, and were you concerned about it?
So I had to quit wrestling my sophomore year. That's a good question, because my diet wasn't that great, because my first year of wrestling, I had no issues with, I could eat whatever. I just could eat anything. And I ate healthily, but I love sweets. So I definitely love eating. Until to this day, that's something I struggle with. But I could eat anything. I could eat anything and not gain any weight. And I was always fit in terms of running and all the physical stuff that you had to do in terms of sprinting and running a mile test or 2 mile test, Cooper test, any of all those tests I could pass. Pretty simple. I had natural physical ability to do those things, but I was never physically able to hold people off. I was a little bit weaker that way. So I did a lot of my own, or followed my older brother's weight routines because he was in college at the time. So, just lifting weights to try to get stronger, but I wasn't putting on weight. I wasn't growing. So I could eat pretty much anything. And then eventually I started growing a little bit. I think by my sophomore year, I was wrestling 112. So I started putting on a little bit more weight. We were competing for 103 and 112. I actually would lose weight to wrestle 103 my sophomore year. But then that was when I had to make a decision, because I was gaining a little bit of weight. But to be a good wrestler, you kind of have to lose weight to wrestle against kids who are that size or smaller, but you're bigger. So I decided to quit wrestling my sophomore year. And so that my junior year, I can actually put on weight and be about 115, 120. And so, but I could, diet wise, I could pretty much eat. But our household, my parents, we didn't eat a lot of fast food or anything like that. It was mostly.
You had good genes. You had some good genes.
Good genetics in that way, yes.
Good question. Thank you.
Junior year, I broke my leg, and then senior year, I actually got to play, but I actually ended up hurting myself. Actually, I hurt myself sophomore year and junior year.
Did you ever play against a school called Arcadia?
Arcadia, yeah. Yeah, Arcadia, I think so.
Is that one of those private schools up in New York?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a private school, but it's an area.
It's an area?
Yeah, I think we did. Can't remember the kids on that team, though. But anyways, I ended up playing 1 year of varsity, basically 1 full season of varsity high school soccer. And I had a good year. I mean, I scored a bunch of goals. Some of those highlights you saw were actually from my senior year. That's pretty much all the film I have from my high schools from playing as a senior. And for me, college soccer was so far away in terms of getting recruited, because no one knew who I was. I actually hurt myself my sophomore year too. I forgot. I broke my leg twice. I forgot to say that. So my sophomore year, I broke my leg.
Junior year.
I was pretty much didn't play that much. I broke my foot my sophomore year. I thought it was my junior, and then I broke my ankle my junior year. So I had those backwards. And then senior year, I actually played a full season. I was one of the better seniors, so I got invited to a senior game where the college coaches come watch. That was pretty much my only showcases as they have them today. Our teams didn't really play in those. There weren't really those back then. High school was the way to get recruited. That and going to camps. I went to the Brown camp, and the coach was semi-impressed with what I could do my senior year. but it was I had to walk on. And that senior bowl that they had, I did well. I scored 2 goals, and there was a couple of local colleges that were interested, but I was so far removed. Like I was thinking academics. My brother played in college at the Air Force Academy, and I was kind of, my sophomore and junior year's experience kind of led me to be more academic focused. And so I was thinking, I'm going to follow his footsteps, prepare myself to go to the academy, Air Force Academy, and that's where I applied. That's the only school I applied to. And I got in. And so when I went to the academy, I knew I wanted to at least try out. The coaches knew of my older brother. Obviously, he played there for 4 years. But I don't think they expected me to be, they didn't recruit me. And so I went to the Air Force Academy, and anybody who knows anything about the academies, it's a difficult, first year. You basically go through a strict regiment of your summers. You don't have a normal summer, right? My summer senior year, I had one little trip to North Carolina, and then I had to go to boot camp. And 6 weeks of training basically before the school starts. And life is tough. You can't have contact with anybody outside. At that time, we had internet, but you weren't allowed access to any internet. You obviously don't have a phone. You dress everyone dressed in uniform. You're physically speaking, having to go through training every day, mental as well, remembering history and military history and military facts, things like that, being drilled on a daily basis. You eat at attention, which is a weird one. You eat at attention, which is you have to sit at the front third of your seat. You get 7 chews per bite. So you're only allowed to chew your food 7 times. So you have to take small bites, and you eat basically in an erect, like an attention, looking at this eagle on your plate, and you're like this. So it's very regimented. But going to soccer, I went to an open tryout. I went to the open tryout that they had at the academy, which is like open to any of the cadets that were there. And they have a huge complex. Anybody who's been to Colorado Springs has a huge complex there. And I think from what I remember, someone just was like, "Are you Shaka Walker's brother?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "You're on the wrong field. You're on the wrong field." And so they had me go over to where some of the recruits were, some of the players who were there were looking to recruit. And so I initially was in the open tryout, and I ended up with the kind of the regular tryout that they were gonna pull in guys for the varsity team, for the team. At the Air Force Academy, they have JV and varsity. Well, I didn't make the varsity team. I didn't make the top team. So really, if I had gone to anywhere else, or most schools don't have varsity JV in college. Right. So I probably wouldn't have made it at a regular college. But because they have Air Force Academy had a first team basically and a second team, I was able to kind of work my way up. I was going there for I played for the JV team pretty much the entire season. I get called up to a varsity game here and there to play with the first team. But my primary team was the second team. And so as a freshman in college, I was playing between the two teams, but mostly with the JV team. And I did well enough by the end of the season, I was kind of only on the varsity team. That last game with them, with the Air Force Academy, I actually had a hat trick. And so things were looking up, but I knew that based on my year's experience there, that soccer was more of a focus for me, and I wasn't so sure about the military lifestyle. And so I decided after that end of that first year, which is the hardest year, one of the hardest years in the academy, because you basically are just a second class citizen. You can't do a lot of things that a normal college student can do. Your freedoms are limited. I decided to transfer. Well, my younger brother, who was, again, had a great high school year, career, he's just a year behind me, was getting recruited to Santa Clara University. And they had just that year before my freshman year, they went to the finals against Illinois. No, against Indiana. And so they're one of the top teams in the country. My younger brother actually went on trial over in England in Charlton Athletic when they were in the Premier League. So he was looking to play pro. Unfortunately for him, right before he was going to college, right before all this stuff was happening, he was at an ODP like state camp or regional camp or whatever it was, and somebody tackled him really hard and tore his ACL.
Wow.
So he had his first real injury, as he's going into college. And I think it was his senior year, he got hurt. And I was transferring. So we both were, he had been recruited to go there. So he was on scholarship. And I was a walk-on because they didn't really have any film on me. I hadn't played really many games with Air Force Academy. And I remember talking to the coach. He's like, that was one option, and University of Washington was the other one that they saw we played those two teams. I played Washington, and my brother was going to Santa Clara. So they figured, I think, through him that I probably was decent. And then University of Washington liked me because when we played them, I'd played well against them. So I was either going to go there or Santa Clara. And I remember being at Santa Clara and thinking, this is awesome. Like you fall in love with the California and the weather and the campus and that too. And then the girls and it's a little bit different. And being from the East Coast and coming to the West Coast and seeing it, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And then I talked to the coach. He's like, well, the only thing we can offer you is walk on. And, and he's like, are you worried about that? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit, but I think I can do it, And so I decided.
Were you disappointed about that in the beginning?
With the walk on?
Mm-hmm. As far as.
I really was willing to take a chance. I knew I was as good as my brother. It was rather that they could see it.
Did that cause you to work harder, or you just believe?
I think that I've always been a person who likes to put in work. I don't shy away from it. So if there's a challenge in front of me, I like to try to overcome it. And I think that's my mentality since I was a kid. And I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to figuring out and solving problems. I love a challenge like that. And even when I was a kid, which is the reason why I think you see a lot of my YouTube channel has all these links to videos. And I used to buy VHS tapes with drills on them. And we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have stuff on TV.
I got those tapes.
I still have them. I still have tapes, Ben Olsen striking, Pele this, or Ajax training drills. I used to just go on, we had the catalogs of Eurosport catalog, soccer.com basically, but of a magazine, and I would flip through them and go at Manchester United, VHS tapes, and we'd purchase them and I'd watch them and I'd get ideas of how to train. I would write my drills down and work and get to work. And so even in college, I saw some documentaries. Even I think about Mia Hamm, about how she used to train on her own. I would watch stuff like that and be like, hey, I'm going to be like that. I'm going to try to put in work more than anybody else.
So you put in the hours a day.
I think as I remembered, I put in time outside of the normal schedule, and I'm not a huge partier or social person anyways. I'm kind of a nerd. So if you ask my wife or my friends, I'll study a lot, I'll read a lot, and I'll train. It's soccer and right now it's computer, programming. And so I spent a lot of time just doing those two things. I had fun too, but I didn't take to this college life like a lot of kids do. So when I went to Santa Clara, it wasn't an issue. Freedom, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm free. It was kind of like, okay, now I can do things that I want to do. And I knew the military life was good for me. It was definitely good. I grew as I think a senior, I was like 140-ish. And I think come as a freshman in college, and that was where I started putting on weight at the Air Force Academy. Because you're training a lot, physically speaking, and you're lifting more. And that was my first experience kind of in a weight room, a professional weight room, where you're really getting stronger and bigger. And I think I put on closer to my current weight within a couple of years. I think my sophomore or junior, I was kind of putting on that weight of college. And so
so you mentioned this. One of the questions that someone put here was, did you think that going through that type of regimented college in the Air Force that first year, do you think that helped you with your discipline on the field, maybe off the field?
Definitely, because you know the mentality at the what you get at the Air Force Academy and any type of military training probably is it pushes you to your limit and you learn how to go past it, right? And there's a lot of group mentality as well. Is you learn how to work within your team. You learn how to carry the weakest parts of your team. So like one of the things that I had to do because I was fit was we would go on these long runs as a group. But our squadron had, all shapes and sizes of people. So we had football people on the team, like linebackers who were huge. We had gymnasts who were, and we had females and males. So it was a group of different athletic abilities. And we'd go on a good run, but at a pace that was, for a soccer player, pretty easy. And so because it was easy for me, and we're carrying our rifle and running, they would make me run around the group while I was running. While the other group is running forward like a couple miles, I'm running around. Every once in a while they say Walker satellites, and I'd run around the group and then go back to my spot in line. But you learn how to push yourself past your normal limit. You learn how to tap into a part of your brain, like when you're physically you feel like you're physically done, where it allows you to push past that. And you also learn how to work with your teammates to help them get past their limits. And when you're down, people are picking you up because everyone has to make it through. Kind of, you're only as strong as your weakest link type of mentality. And so you learn how to work with everybody and their differences of ability, to help them get better. And I think that's helped me more, and maybe outside of soccer and probably as a coach. But that first year was critical because your room had to be spotless. You had to be organized. You got up at the same time every day. You had to obviously rest properly because you're getting challenged on a daily basis. And on top of that, you have to go to school. So, you're eating at attention, with other upperclassmen, but at attention. You go to class, you can't walk to class, you can't carry your backpack on your shoulder. There's a lot of little rules like that you just don't have freedoms to do. You're only allowed to walk on a certain side of the hallways. You had to run to class a certain way. There's like these tiles where it's like basically a grid pattern where you can only run on those tiles to get to your class. Whereas upperclassmen, once you get past the first year, you can kind of walk diagonally across to your class. I had to run down and across to get there. And just other things. There were other parts of it that were which made it difficult and allowed me to learn more about myself in terms of discipline and growth that way. So that was definitely something that helped me. I don't regret going there at all. But I knew by the end of it that what I had gone through was really difficult, but I knew that like the lifestyle in general was something for me. And I definitely wanted to pursue more of the soccer side of things. Soccer there was pretty good at the Air Force Academy, but it wasn't Santa Clara or UCLA or some of the other schools that are obviously top in the country at that time. And so I wanted to pursue that a bit more, as well as actually switched my major. I was pre-med in my first year, and I had some computer classes that I really fell in love with, and I figured, let me switch to computer science. And so like being in Silicon Valley, I knew that would be, a good choice. So I decided to go to Santa Clara and walked on. There were 11 recruits that year. So it was a big recruiting class.
Wow.
And my brother was one of them. So both of us were there at the same time. And it was difficult, but again, physically speaking, you're doing 3 days, like most college, I think Tyler and Mikkel explained in the last QA. I mean, preseason's tough, but nothing like Air Force. I mean, Air Force, you're at altitude, first of all. That's another thing, at being in Colorado. So physically, I was fine. I was able to get through most of the stuff, but the testing that we did was difficult in the preseason because it was another level of higher level of college. So they really, of college soccer. So they really had you prepare. We had 3 days for like weeks on end before the season started. To get ready for the season. And it really was kind of like, can you survive it? And then are you good enough type of a system. But I ended up making the team as a sophomore. So as a transfer sophomore, ended up making the team. And my experience in college was typical. I think as a sophomore, I was off the bench. I was used to doing it at the Air Force Academy, being a JV player, and then sometimes playing with the varsity team. And in high school, I was a starter by my senior year, but on my club team, when I was younger, I was used to just playing off the bench. So my sophomore year, I was mostly a sub coming in. I scored 4 goals that season. Out of the whole season, we didn't make the playoffs. I don't think that year, or maybe, I don't think we made the playoffs that year. And then, going into the next season, I was expected to be have a bigger role. So by junior year, I was starting more games and playing more games, but still wasn't scoring a ton of goals. Wasn't top player in the conference or even in our region. But one of the things I think, if you ask any of the guys who played with me, is that I took it pretty seriously, and I was one of those players who just continued to work on outside of training, on my own or with other players who were also motivated. And then my senior year was where everything changed for me. I don't know what something clicked. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's interesting here. I just want to recap for some of the people who maybe came in a little bit later. So we're going to recap freshman year of high school. You didn't make your high school team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sophomore year, you were on JV. You got injured. Junior year, you made varsity. Made varsity and got that injury.
Mm-hmm.
Senior year, you had a good year, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately missed like a big recruiting period because of the injury. So then you went to Air Force Academy and really grinded it out that year one. Took a lot of new circumstances and situations.
And I wasn't even on the first team. I was on the second team there.
Right. So again, you are again. You're on the JV team, and then you decided to make a change. I think it's really important. A lot of people know that you obviously eventually played in MLS and things like that. But it's interesting to hear just the fact that you weren't one of the highly recruited players out of the country. You weren't even out of your state or your school.
Nope.
Even a competition amongst your family. And I think your work ethic has definitely shown throughout that, because you could have easily decided to give up. And one of the questions pertaining to that did you ever really did you ever feel like you wanted to give up? And if so, what did you do to kind of change your mindset?
I don't remember having any sense of like, I'm not going to play anymore. I think I always had a network of friends and obviously family, that believed in me. So my best friend from 3rd grade, actually, also played soccer, and he played at George Mason. And he was one of the players who I always talk to about what was going on. And he was playing at George Mason when I was at Air Force Academy, and he had a great high school season. He played at Oakton. And I was kind of struggling, and I think I bounced that frustration off of him, and he kind of, helped me get through it. I also had other outlets in terms of I was focused on academics, excelling in something, academically. And I was kind of a nerd. I didn't really have a ton of social outlets. So soccer was my next energy outlet. It was soccer school. And so wherever I was, as long as I was playing, I think I was happy. I think the frustration of not, like, even when I was playing JV, I had a great time. I mean, it was fun. I loved my teammates. I didn't think about, oh, I didn't do this or didn't do that. Like, I didn't think, oh, I should be. Even when my brother went on trial over at Charlton Athletic, I just it was awesome. That's great. Like, I'm not thinking to myself, well, I should be the one over there. And no, I honestly don't even have any resentment towards, him excelling before I did. I thought it was like, I just wanted to beat his team. Like in high school, we played against each other. And so, and his team usually beat us, but that was it. That was just like play my best and enjoy my time. And,
kept that strong mentality. It seems like you always kept that good, strong mentality. You never got too high, and then you never got too low.
That is one of the things that later on, I think what my college coach used to say, and I think my parents kind of instilled in me when I was younger, is you have to have a strong sense of self. And if you're confident in your abilities, other people can't really affect you with what they say. They can obviously keep you out of stuff by not selecting you, but how you see yourself is also very important. And I think that was, for me, I never let, like you said, my highs get too high and my lows get too low. Even now I'm kind of even keeled, later on, I get to when I get to playing professionally, when we won the championship, or even as a coach, when we won nationals, it's like the next day I was back to normal. I didn't really let it linger, and I don't let my failures linger either. I don't harp on them or think about them too much. It's good I'm very self-critical of myself, and I am a person who I'm hard on myself, but it doesn't affect my mood. So my mood was the same, even though I wasn't where even now I think about it, I'm playing pro. If you try to plan it out, yeah, my path to pro was like unlike, there was no plan. I mean, it was play, enjoy yourself, and work on your skills when you can and as much as you can, and then playing at your best at the right moments. This is where the little bit of a luck comes into it, is a factor.
Yeah.
And I think
a lot of people forget about that. You got to be lucky. You got
to be a little bit lucky, and you have to be at your best, ready for the opportunities when they do come. And so
exactly.
I also had a lot of disappointment younger, which allowed me to then, it was too early to give up when I was 11 and 12, but I was disappointed then, not making ODP teams, being a sub for most of my youth career. And a lot of kids now that I coach are like, Coach, I want to play more. I want to play more. And I remember those same type of conversations with my dad. And he's just like, my parents never talked to the coach. That they would say, it's on you to go out there and prove to the coach that you need more time. And their mentality was to just let me kind of figure it out. And it's frustrating. It was frustrating at the time. You kind of forget, because I don't really hold on to a lot of stuff, probably how frustrated I was to extent. But as I talked to my parents, they're just, I worked. I just continued. I love to just grind it out. And we talk about now being more focused on the process. That's more like, growth mindset, things like that. If as a coach, those things I would tell to players. But at the time, that meant I didn't know those terminology. I was so used to always from a young age, loving to hard work, loving to put in work, putting time towards something, and feeling good afterwards, regardless of the outcome, regardless of how it happened, or if I won the game or lost the game, or got the A or didn't get the A, whatever the outcome was. I was less worried about that and more focused on just enjoying the process, enjoying what I was doing. And so I think that some of that is a little bit of maybe an immigrant mentality. My parents were obviously immigrants from Jamaica, and they instilled that stuff in us. And so
there's a question that I keep getting it's been asked a couple times. A lot of people want to know, did any of your bros play pro?
No, just me.
There's like
older brother,
three questions.
My older brother probably could have, if it was a right. He's 7 years older. So think about, a lot of soccer in America really didn't start till 96. He was already out of college. So 94 World Cup obviously changed the whole landscape of soccer for us. A lot of American soccerers were good enough to play pro at that time who couldn't, because there was no league unless you played overseas, and you had to be a national team player to basically play overseas. I was like perfect timing. A lot of things were set up to work well. And when I went to Santa Clara, not knowing this, but San Jose ended up getting an MLS team, having an MLS team, not getting one, but having one. And their recruiting budget at that time was obviously really small. And so they recruited from San Jose State, Santa Clara is right next to San Jose, Stanford, which is right there, Cal,
right in that area,
San Francisco. So, and then a couple of kids were outside of that area, but for the most part, they watched all of the top teams in their area. And what ended up happening was they came to every home game for Santa Clara, because that's where they play now. Well, they used to play there. Used to play at Santa Clara when they came back. They used to play when I was there. They played.
They got a new stadium not too long ago, a couple years ago. I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I was there, they played. Their home field was San Jose State field. It recently just got their own stadium, but they were actually for a time period playing at Santa Clara too. So they came to every one of the home games. And my senior year, when I was starting and playing most of them, at that point in time, I was a captain. I scored almost all my goals at the home game, at all those home games. And so I went from scoring like 4 goals, 5 goals. My sophomore year, I scored, I think, 4 or 5 goals. And my junior year, 4 or 5 goals. So it wasn't on the radar of anybody yet. And then my senior year, I exploded for 14 or 15 goals. So it was a huge jump. And almost all of those goals were at home while they were watching. And so it allowed me, I think that was there a little bit of luck that I would say, that they were watching while I was playing my best.
Mm-hmm.
And,
did you know that they were there watching all the home games?
I had no clue. And I think that helped me, probably because I just played my game. Again, I was not with the mindset of I'm going to play pro. I was thinking I'm going to get a computer job after this. Like, I'm in Silicon Valley. I have a computer engineering degree. I'm enjoying my 3rd year playing at Santa Clara. My brother actually didn't play. He only played 2 years in college. He got hurt again. And then I think he just fell into, college life. He got hurt. He hurt his ACL again. He tore his ACL twice. So even though after he had an awesome high school career, and I had the opposite, I had, marginal high school career, his college career wasn't what he expected. He went from a player who was top in his region, player-wise, high school, one of the top players, played varsity as a 9th grader. 8th grader, he was called up to the varsity team for playoffs.
Wow.
So
yeah.
He was one of the best players at that time. Physically speaking, he was almost like he was a college kid as an 8th grader. That one picture is he's a 7th grader. So
he was big then.
He was big. And he's also even now he's thick. And he went over to England on a trial. He was almost on the path to go pro out of high school, which was rare for kids at that time.
Very. And my buddies did it.
And ended up not really having the college career that I think he would have envisioned.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Did you and him play well together when you guys played together?
Yeah, I don't think we had any issue. We played different positions. So he's a lefty. Well, he played up top in high school, but when he went to college, I think he played on the wing back position. Sometimes up top as well. But, one of the things that I learned, which I tell kids who are smaller now, is that you kind of have to learn how to play the game differently when you're not a bit. You can't use physicality as a way of getting out of trouble. And speed was my crutch. I was faster than most people, and quicker. Excuse me. But physically speaking, you could push me off the ball. And he was the opposite. He was fast and strong. And so I think once you get to college, everyone's fast and strong. And so I think the game probably didn't translate as well for him to make that transition, because he was so used to playing a certain way, and that he had to adjust. I had to adjust early. And then once I did have my size, a little bit more size, it was an added effect to my game. I already knew how to play without it. And so, again, a little bit of luck. I didn't get injured in college, hardly at all. Like, a hamstring pull here, but nothing. There was guys who broke their legs, who tore their ACLs, who had major issues. And I played all 4 years pretty cleanly without any injury. And my senior year is where I made that jump. We did well. I think we won our conference. I was one of the best players in our conference as a senior. And then so San Jose was watching us, Earthquake was watching us, and they invited a group of college kids for that year's draft to a combine. So I never made the official MLS combine, which they used to have, where they invite the top kids. I didn't get to go there.
Usually the best college kids.
I went to a local combine with just the San Jose kids, the San Jose Earthquakes players. Plus, they brought in some A-League players at the time. So Brian Ching as a player who played for a long time, was with me. A lot of the college kids from Stanford. Stanford was one of the best teams in the country, so there's several Stanford kids there. University of California was there. Cal kids were there. San Jose State and Santa Clara. And from that, they were going to decide who they were going to add to the draft list, which is still not even on the team yet. So you have the combine, was a week-long combine, and perfect timing. I don't know what it was, but I was on fire that week. Scoring goals. Me and Brian Ching, I call him Chingy. Me and Ching were on fire. He's a bigger, stronger guy, and I'm faster, and we were just connecting well. Scoring goals and doing well in practice with other professional players and the college kids mixed in. And at the end of it, they said, we're going to consider you for add you to our draft list, which means they might select you. So it's not even guaranteed anything. So I was like, cool. But I wasn't thinking, again, I'm thinking this is awesome, but I'm not thinking anything yet because it hasn't happened. And so.
Did you always play center forward?
I played, primarily all throughout I've played every position. I tell that because when I was a youth player, I trained as a goalkeeper, I trained as a defender, I trained as a forward. My dad made me play everywhere. And because I was a sub when I was on the Washington Diplomats, which if we can get the list of kids who were on that team, you see a lot of names and you're like, oh crap, that guy.
Well, we've talked many times because my brother actually played against those guys.
That team was very good.
He was on the Prince William team. Yeah, it was really good soccer.
Just to get on the field, I had to play different positions. So because some of our best players played up top, and most teams back then played 4-4-2, so you only had two strikers. So I sometimes played the midfielder, wing position because I was fast enough to run up and down and fit enough to run up and down the field. When I was in college, primarily the wing, outside forward position or one of the forward positions was my main position. I never really played in the back in college, but my brother did. So I'm gonna
run through some questions as we keep going. So go ahead.
Okay. As we went through that combine, and I added to the draft list, and then finally the day of the draft came. And at that time, if you weren't a first round, I think it's still the same way. If you're not a first round draft pick or considered to be a first round draft pick, you don't go to the draft. You just watch it on the internet like everyone else. So I'm in my apartment on campus, or just off campus. Sorry. Still doing homework, still getting ready for, it's like January, or no, March, January. Yeah, I think it's later on, early January, maybe in December. Can't remember exactly what month the draft is, but they are
December, isn't it?
It's December then, yeah. December or November. It's late in the season or after the season's over. Because we have preseason in January, so it's before that. I'm at class and not class, sorry, in my apartment, and somebody calls me. He's like, "Oh, you got drafted 4th round," and I didn't know because I couldn't. It hadn't updated on my website yet. And then about 2 minutes later, the coaches called me and said, "We are obviously congratulations, Coach Frank Gallup and the GM at the time, Johnny Moore, called me just to congratulate me and said I got drafted in the 4th round. So and that I would need to report to camp. I think it was that January. For basically another tryout, because you get drafted and I'm the 4th round. So you can think I'm not their top players. They picked 3 other guys ahead of me. Plus they have A-League players who they were considering to come in on trial. And they can add anybody at any point in time. Basically, that's how professional teams are. So even though you get drafted, it's a cool thing. Telling your friends and everyone's very proud. And I was ecstatic at the time. But I had to figure out school because preseason's 3 months and you're not very much at home. So go into preseason with San Jose and, you have to earn your spot. You have to basically earn a contract. And at that time, they had just, again, this is the part of the thing that is a little bit lucky. They had just implemented the developmental contracts at the time, which extended their rosters past, I think the normal was like 18 to 20 players to like 30. So you get these players who are you get to pay them below the league minimum,
right?
And considered developmental contract players. So that was like the new thing. There's only 11 teams at the time. How many teams are there now? Like 20 something.
30, I believe.
30. So there was only 11 teams at the time across the entire country. One of them happened to be in the same town as where I was playing, luckily. And they had just implemented the developmental contract to extend the rosters because at that time, the minimum was $24,000.
Yeah,
and
the league was new. It was trying to build its financial.
Everyone's thinking. You probably think, oh, you play pro, you're making all this money. At the time,
yeah, you're making.
It's like the beginning of any league, NFL. If you talk to those players back in the day, they didn't make a ton of money. Well, the minimum contract at that time for a regular player was $24,000. For the developmental contract was half that. All right, so I'm going from possibly doing like computer engineering, which would easily minimum like $50,000, $60,000 to possibly playing soccer professionally, but also making a lot less money. And I worked my way. I did well in preseason. I beat out one of the other Stanford forwards because there was another Stanford forward who played the same exact position as me. His name is Roger Levesque. He's a good player. He actually ended up playing in the MLS. And we're good, we're friends. Not I say good friends, but they sent him to Portland to play A-League, and they kept me. They decided to sign me and a number of other players. Brian Ching was one of the other players they added. Todd Donovan. Go ahead.
So you were able. So you're going from that college soccer to the MLS team now, and seems like you were able to adjust pretty quickly.
It was a hard adjustment. I think you go from being one of the top players in your team to being basically nobody. The speed of the game is much faster. It's more physical. Your touch has to be better. Decision-making has to be better. Everything is a notch above, and they don't let you off the hook. Like, you're getting exposed on a daily basis. And you have to be able to adjust and learn quickly. Otherwise, you don't make it. Basically, you get pushed off to the side. And I think I think I'm very good at learning the system, getting in there quickly and kind of making my mark. In a tryout environment, that was something I think I'm talented at. I would say if I had a talent, is adjusting quickly. I don't get stuck in my ways. I don't really think I had to do things a certain way. I kind of see I watched Landon. I watched
Landon Donovan for you young bucks.
So the guys who were on my team at that time were Landon Donovan, Dwayne DiRosario. These guys, they actually, my friends were Ramiro Corrales, Arturo Alvarez. These were some of the younger guys.
Yeah.
That I would watch and learn from, and I had to be quick and pick up what they were doing. We played rondos, and we had 3 groups: the Serie A, or the top group, which is like the best players, the B and the C. So we had 3 groups of rondos, and it was by skill. And I was usually in the C, and if you're in a lot, you stay down there. You don't get to move up. Well, I ended up kind of being good friends with getting under the wing of Jeff Agus, who's probably the best captain I've ever had. One of the
best backs this country ever had.
He's an older player. Not many players today probably know who he is, but he also is one of the most. He's won a lot. He's won in college, I think 3 times, I think, in college.
Wow.
He went to UVA, so he won a national championship with them a few times, and he won with DC United all those years. They won 96, 97.
Yeah, he was
99.
DC glory years.
I think he has 6 MLS Cups championships, and then he won with San Jose. Yeah,
I had no idea he had that many.
Yeah,
I know. He's definitely a top. I always liked him as a player.
So he took me on his wing a little bit and challenged me. He actually got me in the A group, and my goal was to not go in as many times as him, and he never went in. He was very good at rondos, and so you just quickly kind of learn how to adjust. But at the same time, I was playing behind Landon, Dwayne, some national team players, and I'm making $12,000, and they're making, Landon at the time probably making $1 million or close to that. You have guys who used to play for Barcelona, Ronnie Eklund, who's an older player but very good. Richard Mulry, all these guys are not. Almost every single position was like a top position. Goalkeeper Pat Onstad, Canadian national team player. So you're playing Jeff Agus as well. So the leaders on the groups and every line you're having to play behind. And my mentality was, if I get my opportunity, I got to take it. I don't care how many minutes it is. And so I practice a lot. I mean, you're just training. As a professional, you're just training. I didn't play my first game until, first MLS game, my debut, I think, was against Chicago late in July. And the only reason why I got in is because it's an international break. International break, but international call-up. So Landon was away. Some of the best players were away on our team.
So in this time, you were doing training on your own, along with your team.
Along with the team training. Did
you enjoy that time? And you had to do it.
Yeah, because
I'm sure.
I had to. So I actually had to stop going to school because I was still a senior. Thinking January, February, and March of my senior year, I had to take off because we not only do we have practice every day from 10 to like 1, right? And most of my classes are during the day. And I had labs because I was in engineering, so I couldn't do any of that stuff. And we would travel. We went to Florida for scrimmages and friendlies, and we went to Spain for preseason. Wow. And this was, I think by March, I think I'd signed my developmental contract. They had decided between me and Roger and some other the players that were coming in, guys that either end up playing somewhere else or playing in A-League. And they kept like 4 or 5 of the 7 or 8 players that they brought into camp, plus the guys they had recruited in. So it was a good group, but I definitely had to work my way up. I was one of the 4th or 5th forward selected.
How did this feel like being, you're 21, 22 years old at this time, and you're playing with 30-year-old, 28-year-old national team players? How did that feel?
They were very welcoming, so it was easy to kind of adjust. The locker room was awesome. I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where the senior players on the team were, and including Landon, did not treat us differently because I was a developmental player. Like Jeff and the coaches, even Dom Kinnear would work with me after practice on my ball striking. I would watch Landon train after practice on his own, working on his strike, and I'm going to copy him. I'm going to go out there and train, and then Dom would basically, him and Jeff kind of challenged me to work on my first touch, which always needed improvement. Compared to them, it was like not good enough. College was okay. Then when you go to the professional level, you get exposed. You get exposed to your ability. And even today, I look at my video, I'm like, it's still not good enough, right? But that was kind of the everyday regiment for us, is that we,
they helped you. It seems like they helped you mature.
They helped me mature, and the locker room was it was very welcoming. Dwayne was a good influence on me, Landon as well. Ramiro, Arturo, these guys I lived with Arturo. And we just hung out. We were very good, close. That group, because we're kind of one of those MLS teams that didn't have the big money, we played at a college on a small field, San Jose. We had trailers as locker rooms. We had to drive to our fields to practice at this park, basically. So we didn't have like the normal setup that most teams have. And I think because of that, we were forced to kind of come together. And the coach, Frank Gallup, and Dom Kinnear were very good at man management and making you feel like even the last person on the roster is equal and given the opportunities even though I didn't play, I wasn't set off to the side or treated differently. It wasn't just Landon and everyone else. It was everyone's together. And also the players. Jeff didn't let it happen. I mean, it was kind of an environment where it was perfect for me to step into because I needed to grow, and it was an environment where you could grow. It wasn't cutthroat yet. It wasn't like some of the teams probably now, because there's more talent, are probably like up or out. Like you have to be good or immediately or you're out. Whereas that time, I think they were a bit more forgiving. So again, timing, the perfect environment for me at least to grow. And I got my first, the experience of playing pro is unlike anything. College was awesome because you travel all over the country and you play and you're with your friends, kind of like high school, but on steroids. Because you have, the entire university now cheering for you. And Santa Clara's doesn't have a football team. So it's soccer and basketball are the main sports. And women's soccer there is very good. So that I think they've won it a couple times. Brandy Chastain went to Santa Clara. So their program was very good. The boys program was okay, but it was good as well. And soccer was watched a lot. And then basketball. So those are the main. So you're big time on campus. Not big time, but relatively speaking. So it was a good experience, but then playing pro is just like you travel all over the world, and you're with, you have access to things that you just wouldn't normally have access to, and you enjoy yourself. But I remember, making that transition, I remember the coach talking to me, he's like, this is still a job, you're still trying to get on the field. Some of what they do, you can't do. And so I had to remind myself that while I was there a little bit sometimes, because you can enjoy yourself too much, right? Especially when you're not playing. But things progressed slowly for me. I was a super sub, right? That was kind of like my role. I kind of, relished in that. I was like, okay, if they give me a moment, I'm going to get in there and try to do my best and give them everything. Do whatever the coach asked me to do, type of mentality. And my first game against Chicago, when Landon and those guys were away, I actually got on the field in my debut, and we lost that game, I think 4-0 or 4-1. And I got knocked out unconscious in my very first game against Chicago. We were a good team that year, but that game obviously we struggled. But I went in for a cross, and I have this on film or on VHS tape. went for a cross, and I was fearless. And Zach Thornton, who is a football player but is a goalie, he has football size.
Yeah.
He came out on the cross, and I just didn't stop, and he upended me. He probably just stood still. I think he just grabbed the ball and kind of just let me hit him, and he's 250 at least.
Yeah.
And I'm like 150. I was 155, maybe 160 at the time. Full speed running at him, hit him on the upper, on him, and fall over and hit my head on the ground. Knocked out, but didn't realize. I got knocked out, but I was able to move. So I was concussed, but I didn't realize it. And at that time, they didn't do any tests for that stuff. So I don't remember this, but apparently I see it on film. I walked all the way around the field with the trainer, and I'm talking to the trainer. And the next thing I remember is being back on the field again. So I don't remember the moments when I got hit the ground and then walked around the field and then walked back out there. That
not
evening,
in your memory.
I completely lost it. That evening, though, then I had the symptoms. I was dizzy, couldn't think, couldn't see.
Yeah, you had concussion.
Concussion. But that year, I was a player that came off the bench often when they needed me, and I started making an impact, either getting assists. I think my first goal was against LA Galaxy later on that year, probably mid-year. And I ended up scoring a couple goals here and there, as a sub, only playing 15, 20 minutes at a time, but doing well on those 15 minutes. Either that or I was running the game out, I was delaying the game or chasing defensively or whatever it was. Physically speaking, I was using everything I had, and then obviously being as dangerous as I could to make an impact. And I think I was player of the month one year because I was the only person to score. We had a rough patch of games late in the season. We had a lot of injuries. Dwayne tore his LCL. So this is where the luck part comes in too. So Dwayne tore his LCL. Brian Ching tore his MCL or something like that. He hurt his knee. So he wasn't 100%. And so I was the next guy up behind Landon to start playing games. And then they recruited or bought Rodrigo Faria from Brazil to bring in. So we really only had 3 forwards going into the playoffs, and we were the number 1 seed. So we had done well throughout the year, but it was throughout the year, players started getting injured at my position. And so going into that final month before the playoffs, we were struggling, and I was starting those games. That was my first starts as a pro. And I'm scoring 2 goals that month. And that was the only 2 goals we scored all month because we're struggling. And we went to playoffs, kind of limping into playoffs, but in first place. And our first round opponent was against LA Galaxy, which now is kind of the famous game. We go away to LA Galaxy, and they beat us 2-0. And we come back to LA Galaxy to San Jose because we're the home team, and we're down 2 goals, and they scored 2 more. So it's
at your house.
At our house. So we're down after the first 20 minutes. We're down 4-0 on aggregate, and towards the middle of that half, we end up Jeff Agu scores a free kick to make it 2-1, and right 10 minutes before end of the half, I assisted on Landon to score 2-2 of that game. So we're still down 4-2. And I had started that game. So it was me and Landon up top. And then the second half, I scored the 3rd goal off a free kick. So it's 4-3. And then we go that's early in the first half, maybe the first 10 minutes of the first half. So it's the pace is going crazy. We're coming back, but it's still 4-3. And at that time, they didn't have the away goals rule. So we just had to score 1 more, not 2 more. And it was the 90th minute, and Chris Ronier scored the 4th to go to overtime. And then Rodrigo Faria scored the 5th in the overtime to win that game 5-4. So we went from 4 down in 1 game to come back in 5-4. And basically that was the playoffs. That was the first round. Second round against KC. And that game was crazy. And you can see that either on my YouTube channel or the MLS YouTube channel. It wasn't even televised, by the way. It was one of those dark blackout
closed, one of those. They didn't have enough fans to
well, there was tons of fans,
TV.
Tons of fans there, but everything was regional back then. So, and then the next game was against Kansas City. Again, we had to come back. I think we were down 1-0 or 2-0, and we had to come back and win 3-2.
Did Preki play on that Kansas City team?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes, that was Chris Klein, Preki, Tony Miola.
I remember that.
Very good team. And then the final was against Chicago. So we won that game.
Yeah, so that's one of the questions here. Speaking of the final, how was the experience of playing in an MLS Cup final?
The only thing as a player, one of the first things or only things I won, except for maybe a state cup. It was amazing. It was a regular game in the sense that you had the same routine in terms of pre-game talks, the hotel situation, getting there. But then obviously having gone through the two previous rounds and being in the new Home Depot Center was a little bit different because we were at home for the first two rounds. And then now we're away at LA's new, big, huge complex. And, the experience is kind of like you walk around, you're like, wow, this is pretty amazing in terms of being in a real soccer specific stadium. And the lead up to it, because I was starting that game, the press is all the practices leading up to it. The press is there watching our sessions and asking questions. I wasn't the main focus. Obviously, Landon and some of the other guys were the main guys that the press talked to. But it's cool. It was cool to see it all, the production of it all, and the excitement. Right, I was mostly focused on just basically not. I was going to say something bad, but basically not being too scared for the moment. Right, being ready for the moment because it was my first final. I was starting. I hadn't started that much through the year, but the confidence of the last few games, because Frank was the type of person that if we won those previous games, he kept the same starting lineup, and he rewarded me because I started the LA games and then the Kansas City game, and we won those games with the final. So even though Dwayne was back and Ching was back, I got to start over them because I was on the field. I helped us win those previous games, and the guy Rodrigo Faria that they had brought in was, technically speaking, supposed to be one of the better players. Right?
Yeah.
But he went with me. He went with the developmental player to start the match, and obviously I thank him for that. But
yeah, what helped you get ready for the big game, for that big moment, the MLS final? Do you have a routine?
I've always, the routine that I had that most players have is, I kind of little things that you have. I listen to music. For me, it's mostly reggae. At the time, I had changed throughout the years, but sometimes our locker room was kind of techno at the time back in the day. So a little bit of techno, as you'll probably hear in some of the videos if you watch on my YouTube channel. But headphones and just listening, and just I think I had certain things I wore. I had a ring that I wore on my right hand. You were allowed to wear a ring, so I had taped up. I had my socks a certain way that everything had to be perfect.
You had your ritual.
And I also was one of the last people on the field. That was like my thing. I kind of took my time in the locker room. I also the last person to leave the locker room because I take forever in showers. But I like taking my time. And then when I was out there, I didn't do too much. I didn't want to run around too much and get myself too tired. I'm kind of like a racehorse, so I have a certain amount of sprints I got in me, and so I was kind of I was pretty loose with my warm up, not taking it too serious. But the team who starts has to do a normal warm up, and so go through the reps, get your shots on goal, which are key. I like getting the shots on goal before the game starts. But I don't remember anything besides that. I didn't. We had our team talks and things that we did, but it was I don't know. It was pretty normal. It was like a normal game, but now you're just in a bigger stage, and it's a little bit of a blur because it happens like so quickly. You're just on the field, you're playing, and like at most games, I just enjoying myself, right? And trying to find the moment where I can make an impact. And in that game, I was involved with 3 of the first 4 goals. I got taken down outside the box for the foul for the first goal where Ronnie Eklund hit out free kick and lasered in past Zach Thornton. So we're playing Chicago. Chicago was the best team in the league at the time, and had national team players as well. Carlos Bocanegra, DeMarcus Beasley, what's his name? Chris Armas, guys who were very good. Damani Ralph, who was a rookie of the year. So they were supposed to beat us, and they had beaten us 4-0 earlier. I don't think we beat them during the year. And so we got the early goal. We had been playing from behind in every single playoff game up until that time. Kansas City scored before us, and so did LA. But this time we were ahead. And then the second goal was I assist to Landon. I turned Jim Curtin in the middle of the field, and we had a good pairing. We were playing 4-4-2. It was me and Landon trying to find each other, mostly me trying to find him whenever I got the ball, and both of us are fast. So I turned in the midfield, turned Jim Curtin, and I remember being tired after turning because I'd run for like maybe 20 yards with the ball or maybe 10 yards with the ball. And I think I either hear or see Landon calling for the ball. And I knew I wasn't going to go to goal. So the defenders kind of overplayed me, and I cut back into the middle. And that was when I was looking. I was looking to see where he was running from, and Landon makes really good runs, which is something I learned from him. Good finisher and makes intelligent runs. And I just slotted him the ball, and he rounded Zach Thornton and put it in. And then for the third goal, and the game was tight. It was 2-0 at halftime, and then they scored, and then we immediately scored on a play, and then they scored again. Then we saved a PK, which would have made it a tied game. So it was 3-2, and then we scored the fourth goal. And Dwayne had to come in for me at that time and assisted on Landon for the fourth goal, and we were champs. And my dad was there to watch. Family of friends were there, and it was an amazing experience. Kind of surreal being a champion. I never really lifted a trophy like that before. I think I hadn't won anything except for maybe a state cup up until that point.
And you won an MLS championship.
In my first year, we won the MLS Cup. So,
it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and playing professionally, obviously you have those experiences. From then on, played one more year at San Jose. Then I got traded. Actually, got drafted to Chivas USA, then traded to DC United because Chivas USA was a new team, and they got basically a expansion draft. They got to pick players from each team to join them. And then I got traded to DC United, where fortunately, because Chivas USA was terrible, I got to join another group that was awesome. Freddie was on the team at a point in time. They just picked up Bobby Boswell, Clyde Sims, me. Ben Olsen was obviously there, Jaime Moreno, Christian Gomez, some very good players. Nick Raimondo, very good team. And they had just won the MLS Cup in 2004. So we won 2003, DC United won in 2004, and I joined them in 2005. And same role, come off the bench, make an impact, try to do what you can with the time given to you. That's pretty much my whole career. And that's what I did. First game I played, I came off the bench, played in Jamaica, actually, my first game with DC United, in front of my family because they came to watch the game. It was in Kingston, and ended up scoring a goal to I think win it. Yeah, I think it was to win it late in the game on a header. But that was what I was known for, was kind of coming in and making a difference and in a tight game, or either closing a game out or trying to impact the game in a way that helped us win the game. And with DC United, kind of the same thing. I never really got into a full starting role ever as a pro. That's probably maybe one regret, if I had one, is that I never really worked my way up, even though I thought I did a good enough job to maybe earn a spot, but I never was ever given the opportunity to be a starter, full-time starter for long periods of time. But I did the best with the time that I had, and we had awesome experiences. We traveled the world, Mexico, Europe, South America, Central America, all of the Caribbean. Played against some top teams. Like we played against Chelsea. We played against Real Madrid. We played against Celtic FC. We played against.
Got some good questions for you after when you're done. It pertains to kind of some of the stuff that you're going over.
Chivas de Guadalajara, Getafe in Madrid. Our preseasons away were fun, and it worked hard, but it's a different lifestyle. And what ended up at the end of the day stopping me from playing and kind of making that transition for me to being a full-time coach. I tore my Achilles in 2007. So that was my first major injury where I needed surgery. And that was the beginning of the end. I was done in 2008, but 2007, I had to sit out the entire season. I was on a contract that year. I had to re-sign, and just didn't work out. I played one more year, and then it was like not the same, basically. And I had always planned for plan B. So I was learning. So one of the things about me is, again, I said I was a nerd, and you ask any of the DC United players, they'll tell you I was in the locker room, was one of the few people in the locker room that was reading computer books. I was learning how
that story. That story that you've told me, that one really sticks with me. I tell it to all my kids. I say,
I knew I wasn't gonna. I mean, I don't know if it was. So my coaching started when I was in college. I loved to coach and work. I worked the camps as a player. So, and I love to work with kids. And I still have some of the pictures and the notes from kids who I worked with during that time, and I'm still friends with some of them online. But that was like the first bug that I got, like entrance into coaching. Obviously I was playing, so I couldn't really coach as much, but we did clinics and worked in camps and things like that with kids as appearances as a professional player. And I also got my coaching license while I was playing. And it wasn't until later on in my career, maybe I was at DC United, and I started thinking about making a website to host drills and I still have some of this stuff. I'll probably post it, but of like how to train and things for kids, right? And I started creating that, and to learn how to build that website, I had to read, because I didn't know any web design work. So I had to learn how to do web design. I had to learn how to do web coding. I had done programming as a computer engineering, but I had never learned those languages. And so in order to learn, I taught myself how to build websites while I was playing. And I literally was in the locker room reading these thick books of how to build websites in Dreamweaver, which was the program that I used at the time. I would not recommend using that now, but I would spend time learning, and then in my spare time, record myself. You can see some of the video I have. I'll probably post it, of me wearing DC United stuff at the practice field, how to strike a ball, how to chip a ball, how to hit it with the outside of your foot, how to hit the inside of your foot, different, drills that I wanted to show to kids who, like myself, didn't have access to some of the content that we have now. And it's probably too early because YouTube didn't exist yet for that. So I had to host and figure out how to host all this stuff. And the quality obviously is worse than you get on your phone now. But in terms of the video quality, but that was my first entrance into building websites, which led me to my post-soccer career, which luckily for me, I was able to have one. So like I knew that soccer wasn't going to be the end. And so once things started going towards, I got injured, I knew I had to transition, and that was perfect for me to get back into computers after I was done. So I kind of planned for that while I was playing. So that's pretty much it. You got some questions? Thinking about time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. So a couple of the kids want to know, juggling. Did you find juggling an important skill to learn?
It is, but I never did all those tricks and moves and stuff. I just did the basics. I think it's something to get yourself. It's like a good general warm up. I'm more of a practical, functional trainer, so I like to. That's just something to kind of get your feet warmed up, and then I would focus on things that are specific to that you need to work on towards your position or for your team. So like I did a lot of finishing. I did a lot of ball striking. I studied a lot of film, but in terms of my own training, I did a lot of ball striking as a forward. Yeah. Receiving and turning and finishing, receiving, playing, laying it off, making a run and finishing headers. Like if you watch my film, I'm dangerous in the box and I'm dangerous on through balls and things like that because I was fast. But if you ask me to like do a bunch of tricks, even now I can't do around the world and all the stuff that the techers that kids do now. I think most players back then didn't do that stuff, and I was one of those players. I think today it's more common for professional players to know how to do all of the tricks, but I didn't spend a ton of time. I just did the basics. Can I juggle with every surface on my body? Yes. And that was basically it. Can I control balls out of the air? Yes. Can I receive balls to my, receive and turn, or when I receive to lay off, or whatever it is? The answer would be yes. It's more functional to the game. So.
Yeah, I think me personally, my opinion with juggling is I think it's a skill, a tool. Being good at it is important. If you can, control the ball better than anyone, I mean, you still have to have the decision-making process part of the game. So yeah. It's good to be sharp there. It's good to work on it. But there's more to it than just juggling. but
I
it is
could juggle
something
though.
that
I mean, when I was a
exactly.
young player, I think the competition at one of the camps, I went to Middle State Soccer Camp, and it was juggling competition, and I won it. So I think I did like 400, 500 juggles,
Yeah.
just to win it. But that was like, yes, that was I could juggle a lot, but I didn't spend a lot of time on the tricks.
Okay. If you had to pick between two sports and you don't know which one to pick because you love both and some days are better on each one than the other, what are some reasons to stay on soccer?
If I had to pick between two sports,
Mm-hmm.
oof. They're equally passionate about both. That would be my question to them.
I think
because
that's kind of where I would head towards it too. I would, what does your heart tell you kind of
yeah, I
thing?
mean, where do you have the most fun?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that would be the biggest thing for me. I loved wrestling, but I didn't love it more than soccer. I loved running track, but I need a soccer ball. I need something to run after. So, yeah, I would pick the thing that you love more, and you just have to ask yourself that serious question. When it comes, the thing that I would, the way that to determine that would be, what do you love grinding more in? Honestly, like for me, wrestling was it was fun to compete, but the practices were kind of a drag. Like it was kind of tough for me to do the practices. I enjoyed soccer practice. I enjoyed training on my own. I didn't really look up wrestling moves. I didn't watch people on TV who wrestled. I didn't care enough in it to like put in the time to get better. And I knew that wasn't my passion. So my favorite player, my favorite, athlete was a soccer player. And so I watched soccer. I lived soccer. My family was soccer, obviously, too.
They want to know who your favorite player was. Oh, did you say it was Barnes?
I said
or
John Barnes, and he's an older player, but if you look him up, and he's a lefty. One of the things that you notice about me is that I can strike the ball with both feet. Part of that is because I liked a lot of left-footed players. I don't know why it is, but he was a lefty. He's from Jamaica. He played in England. He played for my favorite team, Liverpool. And I try to relate to him because he had similar, it's not same, but similar background culturally speaking. And, I wanted to be like him.
He had a grind kind of
mentality. And he had the mentality of like the same way, not too highs and not too low. Pretty even manner, even.
What were you going to say?
So because I could strike a ball a lot with my left foot. I'm in the FIFA games. I think I can't remember which years, but whenever I played, 2002, 2003, 2004. And I think I'm left-footed in the game because I would use my left. I scored more goals with my left foot than I have with my right. That's one of the things as a forward, and as my college coach used to tell me, is like one of the things you were really good at is striking the like quick release and striking with both feet. I can strike with both feet from anywhere. And today's kids, the kids I coach, that's something they struggle with. And for the life of me, they can do all the juggles. But for some reason, you can't strike the ball with both feet. So to me, the juggling question, if you can't strike the ball with both feet, you need to spend time doing that. You should be able to pass, trap, and shoot with both feet. If you can do that, you're ahead of the curve for most people.
Yep, I agree. All right, one from your personal group. How many players on the ECNL 06 do you think are going to go pro?
My goal, so I coached the Hotspurs, and I used to tell this the 2000 team that I used to have relates. That's my my most recent team that I just graduated. When they were U12, U13, one of the things I had in the meeting was my goal was to help one of you guys go pro. It's very hard to go pro. There's a lot of things that have to happen for you to go pro. And so I look at, you never know who it's going to be. If you looked at that Washington Diplomats team when I was U13, U14, and you said that kid's going to go pro, you'd be lying, talking about me. But you'd probably think one of the best players on the team is going to go pro, but you don't know, like my younger brother, how his path is going to play out. He might be the best player now, but not the best player later. And so it's hard to know. The intangibles are really in the character of the person, and it's hard to really know how they are to deal with adversity. I would say, I can't name specifically who would go, but it's probably somebody you don't think of. Somebody who's a little bit quieter, doesn't stand out right now, but is working. That silent person that is working, is probably going to have the mentality and hopefully the luck and the timing of everything to get there. And so it's probably somebody you don't think of. That's usually the answer in most of these scenarios. So I think just that's how I would answer that question.
Who was the best player you played with, and then the best player you played against.
Played with. It's got to be Landon.
In your opinion,
Best
okay.
player is probably Landon. Best person, Jeff Agus. Best leader, Jeff Agus by far. Best player, just in terms of all-out talent. Because Landon's shorter and scrawnier than I am, and he's not bigger than I am, and what he can do, and he's not a player that does all the tricks and stuff. That's one of the reasons why I never spent that time on it either. But he can strike a ball from anywhere. He can score goals from anywhere. He's very good in the box. He's good at making runs. He's good at linking up. He's a good teammate. And so that's what I would say for best player. And then best player I played against, it's tough. Actually, on the field or on the roster we played against Real Madrid. So
yeah, go ahead. You can go for both.
When Beckham was there,
I mean, you play the Galacticos. Man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, we played against. Oh, personally, Cannavaro. You probably don't know.
Fabio Cannavaro.
World Cup for Italy, defender.
Yep, he's the captain. He's the only defender to win FIFA Player of the Year, I believe.
Yep. Probably the best player. I actually was on the field playing against because we played against them. Trying to think of who else. Jaime was probably a close second to the best player I've ever played with.
Yeah.
Very talented. And Freddie Dew was actually pretty good too, but I think Jaime, even though he was older when I joined, the best touch, vision, ability to score. I mean,
yeah.
And he's not the biggest, strong. I mean, he's a big guy, but he wasn't even at his fitness at that time when I probably played with him. But he still could impact the game like no other.
Yeah.
A small story about playing against those type of teams, Chelsea and Real Madrid. When I was playing against Chelsea up at FedEx, not FedEx, but I think it's FedEx, yeah. I got on the field later on in the game when I normally do, and there was like a 6'5" defender. I can't remember his name now. And I like to make runs in behind. This is the first time that I experienced a defender who didn't let you make runs in behind. And the way it was a rude awakening, let's just say that. I try to make a run like I normally do, basically a run that kind of runs in behind, like off the shoulder of a defender. And he's a bigger guy, not as fast as me. And instead of letting me make that run, he's a big dude, got in my way. So I kind of cut in front of him to make my run. And he just basically stepped in my path. And as I'm running, this is my naivety, I'm looking at the ball. He just clocks me, like just decks me and knocks me to the ground. And I was just like, so that's how they defend in Europe. Like they don't even let you have the space to run. It was kind of a funny moment because the guy just looked at me on the ground and just kept on playing. I mean, I don't remember his name, but it was an interesting experience playing against them.
Wow. All right, let's see a couple more here. We got a bunch of questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
We might have to get them answered and put them on we'll make a YouTube video of all this, and we'll have it for everyone whoever couldn't watch it all. Let's see. Was it when you were at the Air Force Academy, was it hard to remember all those rules?
No, because you got in trouble if you didn't.
That's what I thought.
And if you didn't remember, you were encouraged by your squad mates to remember because they got punished for it. So a lot of it was group. If you're weak and making mistakes, either your bunk mates would get in trouble because your room wasn't clean. They didn't help you keep your room clean or do your bed or shine your shoes or make sure there was no dust anywhere. And they would come by with white gloves and just wipe along everywhere and check. I never slept I didn't sleep underneath my sheets for an entire year because the bed had to be made a certain way. And so I didn't want to make it every morning. And the bed had to be done. I have pictures of how it's done, basically measured, and everything had to be perfect. So what ended up happening is people sleep on top of their sheets and and the only thing you have to fold up is the blankets. You sleep underneath your blanket, and everything else was done already. But yeah, I mean, you remember them just over time.
Wow, that sounded tough.
Yeah.
Did you have to redshirt that year when you transferred?
Nope, because we were out of conference. We were Air Force Academy is Mountain West, and Santa Clara is West Coast Conference, so didn't affect me.
How long were your pro practices?
about 2 hours. From time you got there to time you left is about 3 hours. Actual practice, because it's not as intense as say some of our practices. Even as a club player, you kind of mosey in. Your guys are playing, table tennis or soccer tennis, kind of just messing around, getting their treatment. You're there for like an hour before practice starts, and then there's some, you get your massages and things like that, and then you walk out to the field. At least when I was at DC United, we'd walk out to the field, and then have like a good warm up on activation and stretching and rondos and stretching and running. And then we get into like possession and tactics and stuff like that. Usually, sometimes we'd break into defense, offense, and some, do finishing and defensive work. And then we'd play at the end for a little bit. And then, cause we were playing multiple games, we had a busy schedule. The practices weren't fitness based and like college, we had to cram everything into 1 or 2 months. We had an entire season kind of to prepare. So preseason was tough in terms of physicality. You had to pass your fitness tests. But then during the week itself, when you had Wednesday, Saturday games, the training wasn't as intense. One of the things I didn't bring up is that because I was a kind of a reservist, they had a reserve league for a couple of years. They didn't have it for every year. They actually got rid of it. But when I was at DC United, the first year I was there, the guys who didn't play in a full game on Saturday played against that same team's subs in a reserve game that Sunday. So I actually had a double duty, played Saturday, maybe 20 minutes, and then a full game Sunday. So guys like me, Aleko, Freddie, some of the guys who didn't play a full game on Saturday, we actually had the best reserve team at DC United. We won the reserve league that year, and I was the leading goal scorer for it. So I actually had a really good 2005. 2005, 2006 is when they had it. I think they got rid of it in 2007. So,
do you think it helped you motivation that you were smaller than others?
My motivation? No. I mean, I always wished I was bigger at the time.
Made you work harder. Maybe.
Yeah, I think I was accepting of what I was until, but I knew I could, eventually I would get bigger. My dad is not a small guy. My mom's not a small, my brother who's older. I could see how tall I would probably be.
Right.
I just was a late bloomer. And I could work on the things I could work on. I did lift weights. Even from a younger age, I was, lifting weights, and just staying as fit as possible. Luckily for me, I was fast. Probably one of the faster players, even in the pro. Landon and I were probably pretty equal in terms of speed.
Wow.
So
Blazers.
That was
Speaking of Landon, that works perfectly to this. I'm going to say this is our last question for the series for tonight. We've been going for quite a while, but actually one of your former players from Hotspur, Cam Yup, asked, did Donovan have a crazy work ethic?
It was, to me, a crazy work ethic because you didn't expect it. It was surprising because he would stay after. I mean, he would stay after practice and work on ball striking. And the angles that you see him score, that I saw him score, and you see him score now, he would work on those same exact positioning in the game. He could hit us. He could 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 from certain spots of the box in certain areas, take a touch and strike it to the far post exactly where he wanted to, on the ground or in the air, wherever he wanted to, just about every single time. And so to me, that's what I learned. I learned, okay, if I want to be where he is, even close to that, and he's doing that work, I need to be doing that work too. I had that mentality at Santa Clara, but it was like eye-opening and good to see that a player like that also was putting in that time. And I think if you hear stories of like Cristiano Ronaldo, you hear about how he trains. He's nonstop. He's relentless. And the other guys who were on the team also kind of fed off of that. We were a team that liked to put in work, and he led the way, being the marquee player on the team. He didn't have to. He didn't have to. He just came from Europe. He's already a household name. He's on the national team, and he's out there challenging me to finishing drills. You know what I mean? Or Dom is having me and him and Ching and Brian Ching and Dwayne Rosario all together, who could finish these balls and working off of in pattern play and things like that. It was kind of good to see. It was perfect for me to see as a young player. Hey, that's how. And then on top of that, Jeff Agus, I can't thank him enough in terms of he putting me under his wing and saying, here, you are good enough to play. You got to obviously improve in these areas, and I'm going to help you and challenge you and make you feel welcome. And a lot of guys were like that on the team. It was really good. They definitely got on me. If I had a bad, if my touch wasn't good enough, because, in a game situation, they'd let me hear about it. If I missed a chance in the game, they'd let me hear about it. But it was like tough love. But we got along enough that they would also look out for me as well. So.
Awesome. I got one more for you.
All right.
And it says, this one, I think we've talked about this a couple times. What sport do you think helped you play soccer the most?
For me, I'd say track. Like what sport?
Yeah.
So the thing is, my family, my godparents, my godfather was the George Mason University track coach. And one of the things that we would do besides going to soccer camp was go to track camp to learn how to run. Even though I was fast, I had to learn how to you can get faster. If I actually ran, I wasn't that fast for a track person. It's like somebody who ran track. It's funny, I ran track in high school and kids would burn me. People who ran the 100, I'd be like third or fourth in the race. So there were people who were a lot faster in my school, but they didn't play soccer. So one of the things you learn is how to run. Even as a pro, one of the things we spend a lot of time on is those mechanics, right?
Technique,
being just refining yourself and getting that edge to the point where you're not just relying on your natural talent, you're also improving upon it. And so as a younger player and somebody who was already naturally fast and coordinated and didn't have any issues there in terms of that, I learned how to get faster by running track. And it helped me, especially since having a coach being able to point out things that are wrong and just improve all that little stuff. So I think if you ran track, especially the sprinting stuff, if you can get somebody to teach you how to run, that's helpful. But other than that, I'd say any sport really. Basketball probably is a good.
Yeah, I like basketball.
Team sport as it relates to soccer. I played hockey, not hockey, but I played street hockey.
You did wrestling too? You talked about your wrestling?
I wrestled. I never played basketball. I never did basketball, football, but yeah, wrestling was good for strength, learning how to diet. I think dealing with pain because you get put into some weird flexible positions, and,
yeah,
and you definitely learn how to get through that mental side of things. But I'd say track would be the answer to that question.
That's great stuff. So I will hold off on the rest of our questions. I'll put them down and try to get Jamil to answer them and maybe put them on a sheet, and we'll get the link to this up. I'll just let Jamil, if you won't mind, take the next couple of minutes or whatever to end here and just give some helpful tips to all the players and parents that are watching out there, and I appreciate it.
Well, obviously there's not any one thing I can say that is like a secret to success. There's a lot of little things that have to happen, a lot of little things that have to be done in order to make it. And some of it is just timing and luck and being at the right place at the right time. Apart from that, which is what you can't control, I focus as a coach as much on as developing the right habits and mentality. So your character outside of your training is what drives you to do a lot of the things that you do. We say go out there and train. We say, work hard, work ethic, motivation, things like that. But it's your character that kind of, drives you through the moments where you don't feel like it. Like, I'm sore today. I don't feel like working out. I'd rather play video games. I'd rather eat bad food. I'd rather just relax. I'd rather. That battle in your head is something that's going to be, it goes on nonstop. Even now, like, I could take a break. I could always take a break. Your body's always looking for that out. And if you listen to that side of your body, that conversation you have more often than not, usually that will lead you down one path. You could still get lucky and get there, but you're not going to sustain it. That's what I found, is that in order to sustain through, not making it at a young age, having a rough high school years, playing in college and doing okay, and then being ready for those trials in the combine, and then sustaining, not only playing 1 year, but winning an MLS Cup and doing well and playing for more than 1 year, not playing that much, right? Training most of the time, but only playing every once in a while, isn't the dream that I had at the beginning of all of this. I wanted to play in the World Cup. I wanted to, be one of the best players in the world. But I think mentality I have is that I had, and I think you have to train yourself on and constantly. It's not a what's the terminology? It's not a trait. It's a skill. It's a skill that mentality is a skill. It's not something you just have or don't have. It's something you have to train at, build habits around, and evaluate yourself, being self-aware. I could name a ton of things that will help you get there, but like you have to kind of just work at that and build little habits and an environment that allow you to be successful, be the best version of yourself. That's like the mentality and the habits are the biggest things that I try to push my players to develop, because the winning and losing is always it's going to be up and down. You're going to have good years, bad years, streaks where you're winning everything, and streaks where you're not winning anything, or success and failure. Like it's going to be that whichever it tips is going to be not up to you sometimes. And so how do you stay the course through all of that? You have to have strong resolve. You have to have strong sense of self, as my parents would say. The analogy that kind of give, and I was thinking about before, is everyone knows, if you look at a map, how to get from America, if you had to sail from America to Africa, right? And on a map, it looks pretty simple. So you look at my life, you look at any professional player's life, you look, hey, they were a youth player, they were a superstar. They must have been a superstar, right? They got recruited to play college. They had an amazing college career. Then they got drafted, and they were one of the best players, and they were just there. You just kind of see the end. You kind of see these milestones in a person's life, much like that trip to across the ocean. Once you're out there actually doing it, and you're away from your comfort zone, say away from the coast. We live on the East Coast, right? You're traveling on a boat to Africa. You can't see the coast anymore. So you're outside of your comfort zone. The ocean is much more vast than you think, right? It's a much further distance than you think. And to be able to get through all the bad weather and not knowing where you're going, and just the uncertainty of all of that, a lot of people turn around and go back. A lot of people don't have that staying power to say, you know what, I trust myself, I believe in myself, it's this direction. And and if it's not, I'm okay with correcting again and correcting again and correcting again until I get to where I want to. I don't turn back, I don't look back. And I can keep making mistakes. I can go down, up, all over the place, as long as I'm making making decisions that help me get to the next spot that gets me a little bit closer. That's kind of how I see things. Everything I described in this hour and a half long conversation was 20 plus years of my life, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the vastness of the ocean. You can't really put it into one little thing that you can digest, because my personality, my upbringing, my parents, my environment around me, plus things that happened to me or throughout my life, I was able to still navigate that stuff, figure out a way to be ready at the right time. And be ready at the right time was the luck part. Being ready, that right time may never come. And you kind of have to be okay. And I might have broke my leg my senior year and instead of my junior year. It could have been, I went on a walk-on at Santa Clara and didn't make it. I would have been okay with myself at that point in time, because I would have tried to excel at something that I was in love with and passionate about if it wasn't soccer. It didn't matter what it was. It was little things. The habits are there. The foundation is there for me to excel at anything, which is the reason why I think, I would say that I'm decent at coaching, is that I apply the same mentality towards coaching now, is that I put that same type of mentality, effort, the habits, and the work ethic. It's in me. It's not anybody forcing me to do things. It's not I'm guiding myself in a way, and I use influence of, I read a lot and get information, learn from people who are better than you. I learn from Landon. Right now as a coach, I learn from other coaches. And I'm the same way. I look at what other people do and I go, hey, I want to be like that person. And so how do I do it? And I figure it out. And that's the challenge every player has. Long-winded answer, but
no, that was great, man.
Hopefully
great.
Hopefully that will give you an idea of where I'm coming from.
I really appreciate taking the time here over this almost 2 hours now. There was a lot of great nuggets in here. Personally, I think maybe most people, like you said, they see the end. You know, you played pro, you won MLS, you know, you had to been a high recruit guy and all that. And, you know, maybe you didn't have as many struggles, but to hear the stories from you and to understand that everything is not peachy. You know, the struggles will happen, but don't be afraid and keep fighting and, you know, go for what you believe. Believe in yourself. I think, you know, one thing that's definitely learned from you working with you. So, you know, obviously we had a great year in the 2016 summer, you know, the winning the national championship.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been a pleasure. So I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the time and look forward to keep working. I've done a poll here to see what maybe our next topic will be on our series. So it looks like we'll try to get a college coach on here with a high school guidance counselor. And we'll keep working from there, but be on the lookout. And I will look forward to seeing everyone next week. Thanks again, Jamil.
I'll just say at the end, if anybody wants to contact me directly with questions, you can email me. If you have my phone number, you can text me. But and maybe Alan can post my email, jamil.walker@mcleansoccer.org. Any follow-up questions that you have, I'm always willing to kind of help any player that I can kind of impact. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching. You guys have a good night. See you next week.